Rev up your engines! All right, you think the world's gone insane? Yes, it has. The 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act now is requiring breath analyzers to be in all new cars as soon as 2026. Yes, they got to control everything. Now, I'm so sick and tired of everybody being punished by the sins of the few. Some people drink, they can't control themselves. Why would everybody buying a new car have to have a breath analyzer built into the car? These woke people have lost their minds making a law like that. And of course, the hilarious thing is, the car manufacturers have no idea how to mass produce these things. I had a customer once in Houston, got caught drunk driving, and they had one added to their Toyota, and it was a real job having that all put on, and they had to blow into something in order to get the car to start to prove that they weren't drunk, and there were cameras showing that it was them blowing in it, not the passenger. I mean, what is going on in our society where everyone has to get punished because a few people are a bunch of screw-ups? Now, this rule was hidden in the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, you know. That's how the politicians always do. They hide stuff so they think nobody's going to read it. Well, eventually somebody does. And now I'm telling you the absurdity of what these politicians are thinking. Here's what they're planning on. Like I say, they don't really have them yet, but they're planning on having the drivers exhaling on a small sensor embedded in the steering column or side door trim, and then a way to pass-fail reading on the alcohol content of the breath, whether the vehicle will start or not. And the machine uses an algorithm that measures the level of carbon dioxide versus the level of alcohol, using an infrared detector of different wavelengths. To me, all they do is they go after a smallish problem by penalizing everyone and not even going at the root of the problem. Why are people getting drunk, right? And penalize everybody that spent all this money on stuff in your car because of a few bad eggs. There's just something wrong in these people's minds, you know? They think that they're doing the right thing, but they're just living in la-la land in their little ivory towers. All-wheel drive and steering says, I got an '08 Lexus GS 350. I watched your video on not leaving devices plugged in the OBD port, but I have a dash cam that I can power by that. Should I use that? No, don't. It's an OBD2 port. Onboard diagnostic level 2 for analyzing what's wrong with the car. It's a diagnostic port. It's not made to have something plugged into it all the time. I would not use it to power your dash cam because let's face the facts. God forbid something goes wrong with the dash cam or the wiring. You got an OBD port, it could go back and it could short out your main computer. You never want to hook up anything there permanently. Never, 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 never. They're not made for that to begin with. They're only made for a very tiny amount of power. You're not supposed to run anything off of them other than a scan tool that hardly uses any power at all, right? Wire it directly off the battery with an inline fuse. That is the best way to do it. I mean, if you want to like piggyback it, say, to where the cigarette lighter is or any of the little powering devices that are made for powering things, go right ahead. But do not use the OBD port. They're not made for doing any kind of power. And like I say, if something goes wrong with that dash cam and it feeds back to that OBD port, it could destroy your main computer and cost you a fortune. Wire is cheap. Run it from the car battery with its own fuse, and then you'll never have to worry about any problems happening. Twisted Tone says, hey, I recently traded my 2014 Ford Explorer with 130,000 miles for 2017 Camry 4-cylinder 6-speed with 80,000 miles. One owner car. Is that a good choice? What should I look for? Well, that was a fantastic choice. If you traded even, boy, you got a steal there. You got a newer Camry with only 80,000 miles. You're getting rid of an Explorer that had 130,000 miles. That was a smart move for more than one reason. One, everybody's nuts about SUVs, right? So the Explorer's an SUV, and they go for higher resale because everybody wants SUVs. But people don't seem to want sedans anymore, right? Well, the Toyota Camry sedans can run forever. Those things are so well made, especially with a 4-cylinder engine. It's just that people like the SUVs. You made a great move getting rid of that. I tell you right now, the Ford Explorer is a 2014. At some point in time, that tranny's going to go out with 130,000 miles, and that costs a fortune, where the Toyotas generally run and run and run and run, and they don't have any problems like that. That's why I tell people, you might rethink your choice when you're looking at a used vehicle. Don't always think, I gotta have an SUV. You find a good Camry, they got a lot of room in them, 4-door, big trunk. You can carry a lot of stuff in that. You're gonna get such a better price than you are buying an SUV. That's just the way that it goes. The SUVs are so popular, everybody wants them. When things are popular, the prices go sky high. Go for the things that are good. Don't break down like a Toyota Camry, but are just sedans that aren't that popular anymore. Ricky Wim says, I have a trouble light flashing codes. Got a 94 F-150. I got 5 flashes, then 3 flashes. Truck is 189,000 miles. What could it be? All right. Well, that's the code for throttle position sensor. It could be you got a bad throttle position sensor. It could be the wiring going to the sensor, or it could even be problem in the main computer that feeds the sensor. Mechanics generally charge $150 an hour up. It's very easy to change the throttle position sensor. You go to any discount auto parts store, buy one, they'll show you where it is on their picture. You can drive the car over, open the hood, and they can say, there it is. You unbolt it, put the new one, plug it in, and away you go. It's an old one. You don't have to reprogram anything on a 94. Just put it on, you drive away. If that fixes it, great. There's a simple fix for you. If not, then you got to check the wiring, digital oscilloscopes, measure the wiring to see if the short's anywhere. And if you can't find anything then, it could be the main computer. Then you really have to get a mechanic then, because that has to be reprogrammed. But a lot of times it's just the throttle position sensor. But do look closely where it plugs in, because sometimes the wiring there gets frayed. You see where frayed wiring, you get a new wiring piece and then solder that on so it fixes the problem. But a lot of times it's just the sensor itself, and they're not all that expensive. Joy Ferrome says, my MAF sensor is acting weird. I got a 2007 F-150. I graphed my MAF sensor. It goes 5.5 to 6 for around 10 seconds, then it drops under 5. What do you think it could be? When you look at your MAF sensor reading, you can only really get a good idea of what's going on once the engine is warmed up and you have it idling in gear. If you're just sitting there and you start it up from cold, you're gonna get all kinds of readings, because as the engine's warming up, squirrely things happen. The engine's deliberately given extra gas to warm it up when it's cold. So basically, you wanna drive a vehicle around till the temperature gauge is where it normally is, about halfway, right? Then stop on the driveway, put it in drive, then look with it running at the data. That's the only accurate data. Now, if it starts bouncing around, then you might have a vacuum leak. All kinds of things could go wrong. Those readings are high. 6 is too high. But when it's cold, you're going to get weird readings. So always wait until it's warmed up. Temperature gauge halfway, then look at the readings with it in drive with your foot on the brake and see if it stabilizes. If it does, then it's perfectly fine. That's just totally normal. Edwin 506 says, my Hyundai Elantra fuel pump keeps shutting off. It's a 99. I did your video fixing the car where the gas pump keeps shutting off. I changed the canister. There's no check engine light. Sometimes it works good, but most of the time the pump will shut off after I drive 30 or 40 miles. You got a 99 Hyundai. Odds are your pump is just worn out. You know, it's inside the gas tank. It's been sitting there for what, 24 years? I'd say just get another pump. Start there. It's not that big of a deal on that car. You don't have to drop the gas tank. There's a little access panel. You take that off the top, and then the pump comes out, put another one in. Put another pump in. It's just old age. And while you're at it, change the filter. Fuel filter, too. It's inside the gas tank, and you change them both at the same time, and then you probably won't have any problems at all. But take my warning and heed this warning. Do not go and buy the cheapest Chinese-made fuel pump you can. Their pumps are garbage. You want to buy a quality, original equipment pump. Or like if Bosch or somebody makes a replacement pump, Bosch makes good stuff, buy a Bosch pump. But don't buy. Bosch says made in China for the pump. Don't buy it, because sometimes they won't even run when you put them in, and maybe a few months later it'll break down. Hey, if that thing's been in there all those years, you put the same pump back in, it should work pretty fine. But that's generally going to be your problem. You know? I mean, do look at your wiring harness to make sure there's no wires that are frayed and broken and stuff, but you say it works for a while, then it stops. It's got to be just the pump is flat wearing out, being that old. St. Antoon says, I got 2014 Odyssey. It pulls to the left when it's under 65 miles an hour, and it pulls to the right when it's above 65 miles an hour. Okay, well, it's swapping off depending on what speed you're going. Swap the tires out first. I've seen that in so many customers' cars over the last 54 years. They get swirly problems with it pulling one way or the other, and I look, your tires are all worn out. Start by putting new tires on. That might fix the whole thing. Once tires get worn, all kinds of weird stuff can happen. Like that, pulling the one way at one speed, higher speed, pulling the other way, because your tires are worn as they spin. Sometimes they'll get rounder if they're out around, or depending on which part are worn. At a lower speed, if they're worn on one part, they might not make any difference, but at a higher speed, it'll make it pull. Do the logical thing. I've seen so many people pull their hair out. We replaced all these parts on the car, and I'll say, well, look at this. You grab the wheel, it goes clonka, clonka, and you see the tie rods going clonka, clonka. Put the tie rod on first. The obvious thing that's worn out, always replace that first. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. Now, if it still does it after that, shoo, you got something. You could have a problem with your drive shafts. You can have a problem with control arms on a vehicle, all kinds of things. But if the tires are worn, replace them first, then see what happens. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.